an eerie sight, for my monster from his slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise,
he did the mash.
He did the monster mash.
Charles, it's a special Halloween edition
There
of
it is.
Sunday with Charles.
It is a pleasure to be back on Halloween, although it's one of my least favorite holidays.
I know, and you know, I was initially going to have you featured in this graphic, and my opening joke was going to be, Charles, this is the closest you've come to wearing a Halloween costume since 1963. And then, you know, we've often spoken to the viewers about how this sausage gets made, and I think people know that they generally are ideas that come from you that are then developed by me. And I had suggested this one, and we were going to have, since it's Charles Ortel's Nightmare Before Christmas, I was going to have you be Jack Skellington, but as I thought about it some more, I thought it wasn't a great idea. You haven't seen this film, have you, Charles?
I don't think I ever have, but I got to say, of your various posters, this is definitely in the top 5. I mean, this is really, when you take, it's such a pity that I don't have, you know, 183 television screens so I can put each poster up on one of them. But when you look at this one carefully, it's really, it's a marvel. I mean, it's just so much intricate thinking and so timely.
Well, and all the players are here. The thing about it is, I've seen this film several times. This is one of a very limited number of films that exist, which I've not once been able to stay awake through the screening of this film. Not because it's boring, but because it has this hypnagogic effect. There are 2 other movies that do the same thing. Akira Kurosawa's Dreams,
right,
which I suspect he's trying to do that,
right,
maybe in this as well. And then Buckaroo Banzai, Across the Fifth Dimension. I have no explanation for that, but they just put me right to sleep. The reason I didn't want to use you as Jack Skellington is because the film is about the mayor of Halloween Town wanting to kidnap Santa Claus to improve Halloween by somehow adding Christmas to, I don't know. But I just felt like it was too sinister a plan. It was not Ortelian, but it's perfect for Mr. Obama.
I think it's perfect for this crew. I mean,
exactly.
And, you know, the Bushes are not in this because they're somewhere in hell.
Right.
But honestly, when this has been a theme of ours that we've kind of had to wait. We started on this together in June of 2017. We've kind of had to wait for Trump to make the progress that he needed to make, resisting the deep state. And, you know, good on him. He's kind of like that show. What's that show? Something Ninja, you know, where it's a reality show where they all...
Oh, American Ninja.
American Ninja. That's what he's had. He's had to be the American super ninja, making it through all of these obstacles over the course of almost now, almost 3 years, I guess. And all the while, the people in this conspiracy, this actual conspiracy, who have been screwing not simply Trump, but screwing all Americans going back to, I would argue, 1989, if not earlier, have this master class here of criminals, of co-conspirators who at one time or another held some of the highest offices, including president in 2 cases, but some of the highest offices in the free world and certainly in this country. These are people, I mean, if you were to go in to a real producer or a real publisher and say, look, you want to do something, a treatment involving a scenario where the head of the CIA, the head of the FBI, the Speaker of the House, the head of the Intelligence Committee, the 2 former presidents, an aspiring president, you know, and on and on and on, all were crooked as fuck, you know, through a process of a long period of time.
Too implausible to be a movie. Get out of my office.
Get out of here. You try that in China. You know, it would never happen. But I mean, and that's what I think. That's one of the tricks, it seems, of fraudsters, is they know that decent human beings will not go to that dark place of believing that people in positions of the highest order could actually be crooked. They're just not going to go there. They're going to say, oh, you know, I'm too old for this. I mean, that's conspiratorial.
Right.
There have to be checks and balances. How could this happen for so long? You know, all the reasons that you come up with. which then allow this collection of ghouls, you know, and I think these are sort of too nice in the treatment. So we ought to go person by person, Jason, through, you know, your treatments here, because this really is, I say this as somebody with no artistic talent of any kind, but I look at this and I say, this is really fantastic.
Well, thank you, Charles. And, you know, this was a difficult one to put together because we were back and forth a bit on the idea, and then this whole thing about you as Jack Skellington I didn't like, but it sort of came together when I replaced you with Obama and made him blue. Because I don't know, for some reason every dead person in this image was blue, but also one of my favorites here is Madam Secretary with her head sort of, you know, sewn on to this weird doll, and she is reaching across Barack Obama to have some of Bill's popcorn. Bill looks like he's been punched in the face a few times.
He's thinking about something else.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then this was actually, I was familiar with this poster because it's from the re-release of the 3D version of this film, and I knew a lot of people who worked on that. And then, of course, we have Franken-Comey.
That's great.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like that.
That's a really good one.
With his buddy Andrew Drac Cabe back there. This is obviously fake because we know that Clapper has nothing in here. So,
it doesn't have anything in his brain, you mean?
no, that brain is just, you know, photoshopped in there. It'd be empty if we actually opened his head. And then we've got, Madam Speaker as a witch. So that's not even a costume.
That's a real. Isn't that the portrait outside her office?
Exactly. Adam Schiff. This is, you know, phases of meth or whatever they call that that website where you can see how people progressed over the years. And then the one person who actually did not need any photo retouching to appear as a ghoul is John Brennan. So there he is.
Yeah, and you think about it. I mean that. We have a system of, in theory, checks and balances that would allow Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett, you know, forget Barack for a second, but how in the hell did Valerie Jarrett get a security clearance?
Yeah.
And then how in the hell did John Brennan become head of the CIA? How did James Clapper become the top intelligence official? I mean, you put the two of them, their IQs together into a box and shake them up, and you might come up with, you know, you wouldn't come up with 2 digits. I mean, these are people who have had enormous resources at their disposal, including the ability to go around the world killing people that they don't like. And they have screwed up, as far as I can tell, every mission that could be screwed up has been screwed up under their leadership. And they are now going to criticize this president for trying to clean up the messes that date back certainly to 1989 forward, if not well before then. I mean, and they're going to do it with impunity from the sidelines? What do these people have? You know, could it be that all the stuff that goes into Twitter and Facebook and Google and all that kind of stuff gets handed over to the intelligence agencies so they can sift through it and then put together a big pile of incriminating evidence against any potential critic? I mean, you have to wonder how they could be simultaneously so stupid and so arrogant and so sure that they're never going to be brought to task.
I think they don't even need evidence. We're learning from Sidney Powell that the FBI, if they don't have evidence, will just make it and then blame you for that.
Yeah, you said that. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No,
we got it written down.
Exactly.
I don't understand why. They need to modernize these things. The FBI should have to digitally record every meeting, and that gets presented along with a transcript so that there's no changing. The subject gets a copy, the FBI has a copy, the court has a copy. There's none of this changing. Every single trial should be live streamed on video. You go to C-SPAN or Court TV or whatever, look up like you're looking up on Pacer. You should be able to watch every minute of every public hearing. And Adam Schiff should be buried under the Capitol building.
Exactly. No, I don't think that's too nice.
Yeah.
I think he should be dismembered first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with that.
Yes, time for the slides, Charles.
Yeah, why I thought this was a great idea of yours to do is because we haven't identified the year. I know some people say, oh, it's taking too long, you know, when is this ever going to be over? Nothing's going to happen. But the truth is, if you're playing not for a simple win, you know, just to get on first base, which is not, you know, God.
Charles dislikes kombucha.
I just like
kombucha.
But yeah, I like the concept. I dislike it in concept. I'll never know what it tastes like in practice unless I'm force-fed it, you know. But no, we have been talking about the fact that the Clintons might have, and the Obamas might have gotten away with this criminal conspiracy if they had simply decided to create Clinton and Company, a consulting firm or investment firm, or Obama and Company, consulting or investment firm. But the second these crooked politicians decided to create charities, and more specifically, public charities, which are highly regulated. Public charities cannot be controlled by a family or a person, and the type of public charity that the Presidential Foundation is a special type that can only hold the records of a presidency, not of a president's life, but of a presidency. And it can allow the general public to study those records. But that's its narrow purpose. And if it does things which conflict with that purpose, then especially if it does those conflicting things after a grant has been made to the National Archives, which is the case of the Clinton Foundation. They accomplished their goal in theory of setting up this Little Rock thing. They took possession in that presidential library, supposedly of all the presidential records, while at the same time they were gutting the legal authority for the thing to operate. So they defrauded the National Archives, they defrauded the American people, and they did this, have been doing this ever since November 18th, 2004, all the while Dopey James Comey and Robert Mueller and Rod Rosenstein have been investigating this at different points in time. And there are records for public charities. There are records, and you can't destroy the records, because if you destroy the records, when a tough, new, fair IRS person and a tough Justice Department person like John Durham comes looking at it and says, "Jason, where are your records?" And you say,
"There's no evidence."
Yeah, there's no evidence.
That's
well, there's
what
no,
they say all the time.
There's no charity then, because if you don't have proof, then you don't exist as a public charity. So we're now barreling towards November 15th, 2009, and I laid a trap, many traps for the Clintons.
2019.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
2019. I laid many traps for the Clintons and the Obamas going back to the beginning of this exercise, because what I was trying to establish is that they and their advisors, the trustees, the advisors, and the donors, not only were engaging in a pattern and practice of deception and fraud and corruption, but that they are incapable of fixing this because of their repeated failures to file anything other than false and materially misleading returns to state, federal, and foreign governments using the mail across state lines. These are all massive federal crimes, federal and state crime, foreign crimes. And so we have this record, and now we sit here with the Clinton Foundation thinking they're going to get away with it yet again. And maybe Hillary in her Chardonnay-infused mind will believe that she can get away with this, and maybe Bill is thinking about his legacy or what life's going to be like in heaven or wherever he ends up. But the people around the Clintons and the Obamas who will have to live with the consequences of yet again failing to file anything other than boldly false and materially misleading tax returns or information returns to the IRS and state and federal foreign governments, those people who might run accounting firms or might be licensed lawyers or might have other exposures to their reputation, or might be in debt, or might have issues of needing to come up with cash, those people are royally screwed. And they're imperially screwed. And at the end of the day, when this mess does get cleaned up, the richest people in the room, the Bill Gateses, the Warren Buffetts, the big governments, are not going to say, "Oh yeah, we need to cover this up," because you can't cover it up at this point. They're going to look. They are going to go scalp hunting. They're going to go bank account hunting. They're going to go look at assets that the Clintons and the Obamas and others illegally have obtained, monetizing the White House, monetizing their government service through these foundations. So this is the first moment we see now with this Durham officially announcing that there is a criminal investigation open. This is the first moment that in recent history that the federal government has had available to it all the tools of the trade, the tools that, for example, would pierce attorney-client privilege in the case of Bill Clinton, the Clinton Foundation, Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation, and the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation.
How can they pierce attorneys?
Because I would argue that David Kendall and the lawyers advising the Clinton Foundation, simultaneously protecting the Clintons through impeachment and afterwards, have lost the benefit of their ability to say communications with the president are privileged because they're part of a criminal conspiracy to make sure that the people at the top of the food chain, be it the Clintons, then W. Bush or H.W. Bush before that, and Obama, are compromised. Lawyers know about it. Lawyers can reward, as they did with Obama in the $60 or $65 million book deal for the two of them. Williamson Connolly has a branch, that's Kendall's firm, has a branch, a guy whose specialty is getting above market book deals.
I got a guy.
He's got a guy, and his name's Bob Barnett. You know, and he's done it for the Bushes, both Laura and George W. He's done it for multiple players on the right and on the left in media land. I think he's Jake Tapper's agent for books. I mean, and he was Obama's and Clinton's and Hillary Clinton's, and you know, and so that's the basic game. You have one of the most powerful law firms in the world, right, but in an American context, Williamson Connolly, right there in Swamp Central, right, screwing up the paperwork of the Clinton Foundation from day one. It wasn't like a minor error. David Kendall and another lawyer, Nicole Seligman, and a third lawyer committed professional misconduct at the most appalling level in failing to organize this William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation because they needed a vehicle to go out and raise money, I would argue, to arrange for the Clintons to pay back the massive legal fees that they'd run up since January 20th, 1993, when Williamson Connolly and others were defending the Clintons against Whitewater, against Travelgate and Filegate and all these different things, without having any money to pay for it. So they found themselves, October 23rd, 1997, they needed a vehicle where money could be sent towards the Clintons, and that money would be rooted.
He's a Rhodes Scholar.
Another Rhodes Scholar. We're going to get into that.
Let me ask you something about this David Kendall and about Williamson Connolly. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Charles, but you know, earlier this week I interviewed Lynn Ulbricht, who is the mother of Ross Ulbricht, who has been imprisoned with a double life sentence plus 40 years for the creation of a website upon which other people sold illegal stuff. He should have been protected by CDA 230, having no responsibility for the things that other people did on the site. Otherwise, they should arrest eBay, Facebook, Craigslist, any of these people that are selling anything illegal. The lawyers were Williams and Connolly.
Defending him, or yeah. So Williams and Connolly, I think, is way too powerful, and Kendall especially is way too powerful. He was a Rhodes Scholar who got out of Oxford before Bill arrived there, but he was in Bill's law class or Hillary's law class, I forget which. And you know, he jokes. There are different speeches, and I think maybe on his resume he jokes about he began his career as trying to be a lawyer in jail.
What do you mean?
Going down and protesting the civil rights movement, and so he was on the wrong side of the law, acting up, but for a good cause, to protest the treatment of minorities back in the 60s. That's admittedly a very good cause. Yeah. But he's one of these guys, as a guess, who believes the ends justify the means. He's got this vision of the world that is going to work well, and he got in bed with the corrupt Clintons in the very beginning. He's been working with them and friendly with them ever since Arkansas. And he and his firm, it will be shown as we go through this, massacred their obligations to the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation in order to, in theory, protect the interests of Bill and Hillary Clinton and Williamson Connolly through the whole impeachment drama and afterwards. That goes to the hub of this. You're trying to understand the business model for escalating fraud. It starts with crooked principals in Bill and Hillary Clinton, and later their spawn, their daughter, Chelsea, and crooked people around the Clintons, a whole bunch of crooked Rhodes Scholars. And it's just amazing how many of the Rhodes Scholars are crooked and centrally involved in the apparatus of the Clinton Foundation. The head of the Clinton Global Initiative is a Rhodes Scholar. The head of the Clinton HIV/AIDS Initiative is a Rhodes Scholar. The current CEO of the Clinton Foundation is a Rhodes Scholar. Now, it seems like you got a bad problem, you got a globalist swamp scheme, go down the list of Rhodes Scholars.
Cecil Rhodes a pedophile?
I don't know if he was a pedophile or not, but he was a very bad dude. And he's an example. I mean, this Rhodes, if you think about it, the Rhodes Trust and the Rhodes Scholarship is yet another example of people with a guilty conscience. And maybe Gates doesn't have a conscience, but it happens that the Rockefellers, when they wanted to launder their reputation, they create the Rockefeller Foundation. When Carnegie wanted to do that, the Carnegie Foundation, the Gates Foundation, the Clinton Foundation, it will not successfully launder Bill and Hillary's reputation by the time we get through with this. Yeah, a pedophile.
Yeah, Rhodes is to be presented, well, this is someone's quote, it seems. Homosexuality, historian and journalist, wrote that Rhodes had been falsely smeared by the program and commenting in 9 tedious hours he's presented to be corrupt and greedy money grabber, a racist, and a pedophile whose disgusting passion was to get his hands on young boys. The BBC spent $10 million of our money putting together a farrago, I haven't heard that before, of exaggerations. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Cecil Rhodes' life in great detail, but I do know that what he did in Africa was appalling.
What did he do?
I mean, he was, master raper and pillager of Africa. Rhodesia is named after him.
People get upset when you say rape and it's not to do with the actual assault of a...
Well, no, rape, when you look in the dictionary, there are multiple definitions of rape. To take advantage of somebody who's vulnerable is a rape.
I agree.
Whether it's sexual or not.
Just letting you know the feedback.
Yeah, people get mad at me wake up mad at me. They wake up mad at me, they spend all day mad at me, and they go to sleep mad at me. But not much I could do about people who are determined to be mad.
That's all right.
So, okay. So the difference on October 27th, 2009 from let's say last year is we do have a new person as head of the IRS. We do have a president. I didn't even put this link in the slide, who was prepared to say in a book on the record that Barack Obama is a traitor to this country. We have the passage of time where people now have been evaluating. Back in 15, 16, you were evaluating the potential of Donald Trump to deliver on his promises. You had no record in politics. You couldn't say, I didn't vote for him. I mean, I didn't vote for anybody in 16, but the point is, you'd sit there and say, well, how do I know this guy can actually deliver? And you could be get a pat on the back for not voting for him, because how did we know that he might succeed? It could have been all bluster. Well, in the intervening months since January 20th, 2017, Donald Trump has delivered on an extraordinary number of promises that many thought were impossible.
Also has a lot of bluster, but
he has a tremendous bluster doesn't begin to. I mean, he is the president bluster. I mean, the guy today with Baghdadi, and this morning he apparently said he died crying and whimpering like a dog.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
But
a canine was injured or something.
The canine was not injured, supposedly.
Oh,
at least what I just.
Trump, I thought, said it was.
No. Baghdadi was killed like a dog. What happened, apparently, according to Larry Johnson, who's a retired CIA agent.
How'd you like that?
Yeah, was that a dog? There is a special type of dog that they send down in these tunnels that can move really quickly and faster than a human. And so that dog cornered Baghdadi, and then Baghdadi realized his days were numbered, blew himself up with a suicide vest.
Do you remember, Charles, when Laurel Everly told us that Imran Awan hated dogs, and then somebody told me that Islamists hate dogs? Well,
they're viewed as unclean, and so that's you won't see many dogs throughout the Middle East.
Huh.
In areas where the Islamic states in the Middle East. But anyway, so we're now at a different point. 27th October 2019, we have a president with moxie and bluster. We have a president who's delivered. We have a president who in recent polls is polling very well among African Americans, way higher than any Republican in the past. Oh. And so we have a deep state, and we have a Democrat Party apparatus that's looking at this and saying, wait a minute, we've got Cheeto O'Rourke, it should be Cheeto Warren, cheating about her ancestry as the front runner, because George Soros says she's the most logical. We've got Beto the balloon head. You go through the list of knuckleheads who are out there as president, potentially trying to be president, and they've got no money, and they're spending money like drunken sailors, because they are drunken sailors in many cases. And meanwhile, Donald Trump, who has a vast fortune that isn't counted in this pile, has raised over $300 million.
Wow.
Now,
Trump is going to crush Charles.
I think so. I mean,
we should have a party on election day.
we should actually. We will. I think, God willing, let's have one. But you get one of those pile drivers. I mean, I once went to a plant in Cleveland. I'll never forget this, in Cleveland, where there was a gigantic metal stamping unit. I mean, like stories.
They have that sign of how many days since the last accident.
Yeah, that kind of thing, exactly. And this was an old-fashioned company. I won't even say the name. It's a small but publicly traded company. I was in with the CEO and a bunch of senior people in the nicest office, which was really run down. And we'd be talking like this, and then you hear, boom, and the factory would go like this.
Wow.
You know, and that's, I think, the way it's heading now, what's going to happen in 2020. I mean, whoever it is,
a big boom.
It's going to be, there's going to be no bouncing back up. It's just going to be straight to China through the earth. But so we have, I think the stars are aligning properly. And people, again, everyone's focused on, there's no quid pro quo in the case of Hillary Clinton. There's no, there's no evidence, as you say. There's abundant evidence. And there's even more evidence.
Say it. Hillary says it.
Hillary, yeah. As you said, Hillary said. But the real thing and the embarrassing thing is that there is so much evidence out there that I know how much evidence there is because I got piles and piles of it scattered all over the place.
At your apartment.
Various places, not just the apartment. Various firms and various governments. And so there's abundant evidence, and there's even more abundant evidence that the mainstream media are idiots. I mean, it's really, they don't want to look at the truth because they know the second they go down and look at the truth, it'll be worse than the Me Too movement. It'll be worse than going into the issue of what really happens, and you've obviously heard what happens in Hollywood. I mean, how many of these people in Hollywood were abused, actually abused, many, and how many were willingly abused? How many said, this is the price tag?
Complicit with the whole thing, kind of.
Well, whether it's an actor, budding actor saying, presently I'm, flipping burgers at McDonald's, and all I have to do is this disgusting thing over here. The next thing you know, I make $20 million a picture. You say, okay, I'll forget, I'll be a movie star. And so it's a symbiotically corrupt operation out there in Hollywood, and to a certain extent, same thing goes for Wall Street, same thing goes obviously in the swamp in Washington, D.C. and other capitals around the world. But we now have a team that is determined, it would seem, to take on these hydras, to cut their heads off, and to round up the various other snakes. And once you look at this from the perspective of saying, well, let's say you're 50 and you're a billionaire, and you've been playing this game with the Clintons, and you're among the richest people in the room who's going to pay the fines. Do you really want to front the Clintons and David Kendall and a bunch of accountants more money and time to try to pretend that you're not going to get crushed by Donald Trump? Or do you want to cut your losses now? And just as it is rumored somebody may have done with Baghdadi, do you want to go, walk into Trump's office and say, all right, you got me. You got me, you get a lawyer to do it, and you say, we can deliver to you the following. We can tell you what was going on with Epstein. We can tell you, where the bodies are buried, literally, all the people who are dead. We can tell you where the money is. We can tell you what the real scheme was. We can tell you which accountants are responsible, which lawyers are, but what we want for this, we're going to save the government a lot of money, is we only want to pay a $50 million fine. And then the government comes back and says it'll be $250. And then you say, 125, and you settle on a number. That process is likely going on right. I don't know specifically that it's going on, but just watching on the tea leaves on this, there are so many wounded dogs here, in a country that allows dogs. So many wounded dogs, and their masters are looking at this and saying, we like this dog, we want to keep it around. We're going to settle this. So if we go, today we have a lot to talk about. We're going to try to do it to schedule. I see that your subscribers are now above 85,000.
Yes.
Which is fantastic.
Thank you.
And for the people who are new to this, I've been tweeting more than usual because I see so much going on, and I want to make sure people were prepared for the show. But for those of you who have not, if this is your first experience on the show, you're part of the show. You're helping us by tweeting, by asking friends to look at this, by engaging your mind, by following through and looking at these exhibits, the links to the exhibits. And for that, we really appreciate it. I mean, this is not your typical show, a cable news show, where you get 2 to 4 minutes or 6 minutes of 2 or 3 people fighting and yelling at each other, and then you get 2 minutes of commercials, the My Pillows, the drugs, etc. This is a show where we try to do some deep diving into this issue, and we knew it would take longer than people had expected, than even I had expected for this to come together. So we wanted in the interim to lay out as many different trails for investigators around the world to follow as possible. And that's what we've done with, this is our 183rd 2-hour, will be a 2-hour or more podcast today. The playlist here has 27,000 views. You think about that. That's a table of contents for this show has 27,000 views. We have millions of views of the underlying videos. Thank you for the time that people spend looking at this. Thanks even more for looking at the slides. For every one of these presentations, we tend to include a slide. We go through the equivalent of board meeting slides with supporting links so that those of people who are interested in looking at the details, well, they can go through the board presentation and they can follow the links to their heart's content. And more often than not, people come back and say, you know what, these dudes are actually 100% correct. I mean, occasionally we get a complaint about this or that. There are certainly typos and punctuation errors from time to time. But on the substance of what we're alleging here, that this is the largest set of unprosecuted frauds ever attempted in history. We're leaving religions out here. In the profit and nonprofit world, no one has been able to come back and debunk what we're doing. It's all bunked. It's not debunked.
Fully bunked. I've found, Charles, that in order to debunk something, actually what you need to do is just say it's been debunked. And people are like, okay, let's move on.
Yeah, Snopes said it. Must be right.
Debunked.
Todd said it.
Fully bunked.
But so this is as I say, this is a joint endeavor here without 420, where we're just going through a whole bunch of materials, a whole bunch of evidence that's out there for you, the public, to think about. We don't do our own audits of the Clinton Foundation, though we're pretty close to being able to do that, actually, without even going inside the company.
This is we stuff. I don't know anything about it.
You're along for the ride. And so what we have here is we have a large amount of material that you can consider beyond this show. We invite your questions and constructive comments via my site, via our Twitter. Keep your thoughts short and pithy in a first exchange, because honestly, I get so much traffic that when I see something that has a lot of links in it and I don't know the person, I'm just not going to read it, because I just cannot invest the time and energy required to get through that. But on the other hand, if in 100 words or less, 200 words or less, you can say this is why you should focus on this, and then very frequently I will then reach out to that person and spend hundreds of hours with that person, but not a disorganized, you ought to look at X, Y, Z, and here's all the work you need to do for me.
Right.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
So with that,
something concise.
Yeah.
Like, Charles, your trousers are on fire. I'll check that.
I probably noticed that one. Yeah. So the first Breitbart piece is actually really, really interesting. There's been a tremendous amount of news in the last little while here. Here, this thing has 6,000 Facebook shares. Remember, and it's been out a lot less than mine that came out in March 16, 2015, that had 78,000 Facebook shares. But the thing that's really interesting here is the deep state was aware that what Flynn was about to do for Trump was to push Trump or work with Trump on an audit, a real audit of what the deep state had been doing with all of these tens or hundreds of billions of dollars. So does that start to scare, would that scare a whole bunch of people who, let's say, let almost $10 billion disappear in Iraq and $8 billion in Afghanistan, and almost a trillion in the stimulus? I mean, you start believing that a guy like this guy, who's a tough hombre, I've never met him, but I would not think that Michael Flynn is one of these guys who's like, oh, I'll let bygones be bygones. Why don't we go pay, let's go play checkers together. I mean, he's somebody who's on a mission to root out fraud, waste, and corruption seriously. He's got the backing of the president. And the deep state says, we can't have that.
Right.
And so they actually entrap Flynn. They actually do more than entrap. They actually corruptly push him to enter in a guilty plea on something he didn't do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to think you would do that to a Marine general, lieutenant general, who I believe was a Democrat. I don't know what he is now, but
he was appointed to the directorship of the DIA by Obama. He was a Democrat.
Yeah. He's probably a Trumpocrat at this point, but.
Well, he's keeping pretty quiet, as you would, with this kind of jeopardy, and I agree. Sidney Powell is doing an amazing job. Charles, we've been doing a lot of reporting on some people who seem to want to be insinuating themselves into this Michael Flynn situation and attributing certain people, sort of coordinating their stories with Flynn's story in a way that I think could be intended to damage the general's defense, and we're trying to raise the alarm and getting a lot of pushback. What you're describing as far as the deep state doing this to Flynn is exactly what I've been talking about, social engineering. But they use the New York Times and the Washington Post instead of YouTube and Twitter.
Right.
It's pretty interesting.
Amazing. So in piecing this together, the Jake Tapper and Fake Yapper and the other people in the mainstream media, they all want you can't talk about this. You've got to pick the story up here. You can't think about the motives and the context and the facts. That would destroy our ability to bamboozle you.
Right.
So the second story is still reverberating around the internet. The story came out on Friday, I think it was. Sidney Powell's brief came out, but in essence, when you read through her brief, which is really stunning, in essence, what happened is that FBI agents, as you say, entrapped Flynn. Flynn thought it was going to be a friendly interview, and Comey has bragged about how the fact that the Trump transition team was disorganized, so we took advantage of that, and they sat down with Flynn. They took meeting notes of Flynn, and Flynn said he didn't do certain things, and this corrupt Lisa Page, who really, she's a woman, so that's fine. Strzok's a man, that's fine. They're cheating on their spouses, that happens, but don't, in this instance, pretend for a second that you can be holier than thou over your behavior. You take a military hero who is trying actually to reform a corrupt system, following the direction of Eisenhower, beware the military industrial. This is a guy who, and was a Democrat. Don't you dare think you deserve any mercy for altering what somebody said in an interview that you set him up for, to make him confess to something he didn't confess, and then railroad him through, threaten his son, threaten his family, force him nearly into bankruptcy. Don't you dare come before us and expect any mercy, because you will rot in prison by the time we get through with this. And there should be no mercy for these people. There cannot be mercy for these people, because the second you allow, remember, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, their specialty and the essence of their business model, in quotes, their monkey business model, is you lie under oath and then you obstruct justice. That's exactly what these people are doing here. And Donald Trump has to get up, and Barr has to get up and put those big boy pants on and gigantic steel-toe boots, right? Let them have a fair trial. Let them try to defend themselves. And when the sentence is meted out, it's got to be rest of life in prison. You forfeit all your assets.
That would be awesome.
But that's what it has to be, because if you don't do this, if you don't make an example of all who are involved in this plot to subvert justice, the markets are going to crash, this country is going to fail, people are going to look at this and say, wait a minute, they got away with it, and they're going to be expecting the next pair of demons, or maybe it'll be a throuple, or like Katie,
exactly.
Right? Or who knows?
Bong
the bong and the comb and all that.
Jeez.
It's.
Are they going to kick that lady out of Congress?
I should probably make her governor of California.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, like a Katie Hill Foundation. But anyway, you look at this mess, and we need to bless Sidney Powell. Yeah. She's fantastic. Absolutely. We've had her on the show several times. You've met her. I've met her. She is really doing fantastic work. And we need to understand the real story of how this plot came together, who was the ringleader, who was financing it, who was giving, this kind of thing just didn't happen with 2 or 3 people. There are probably 50 people involved in this, 150 people aware of this, who knows how many people. Every single one of those people in prison. Death is too nice. The penalty for treason is death. That's too nice. They need to go to a really rough prison if they're convicted and spend the rest of their miserable lives there with no possibility of parole.
Yeah.
Maybe they could be used as, people could go and visit them to see them in their wallow in the misery for the rest of their lives. And they would be forced to maybe stand up in front of the audience and say, I used to be president of the United States. I thought I could get away with rigging an election. Now look at me.
Oh, like go to grade schools and tell kids not to.
No, I'm saying the grade school classes would come to the prison,
right,
and watch,
through the glass,
as
right.
As Bill Clinton comes out from turning one large rock into a bunch of smaller rocks for the rest of his life.
And Charles, people who want to support Sidney Powell and General Flynn's fight against the deep state should go to MikeFlynnDefenseFund.org.
Yeah, absolutely.
Help with that. Obviously, it's very expensive to fight the deep state.
Yeah. So then we get this thing. This is really interesting. Here's Larry Johnson, who is basically alleging, and this is a guy who used to be in the CIA, and they say that there's no such thing as somebody who used to be in the CIA. You're in the CIA, you're in the CIA for life. But he's actually quite a gifted writer. He's a prolific writer. And this was a piece that came out yesterday arguing that Brennan basically had orchestrated this long before the election. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense to me. I mean, what the hell was the FBI doing engaged in a counterintelligence investigation against a political campaign? How do you justify that? The FBI is not supposed to be doing counterintelligence investigations on political campaigns. That's disgusting. And at the same time they were doing this, they were saying, oh, Hillary Clinton, under plain sight with Barack Obama operating the State Department with a corrupt foundation that isn't even really a foundation, all its paperwork is wrong, we'll let that slide. We're going to let Hillary Clinton walk out the back and front and side door of the Secretary of State to put all her materials in the toilet bowl server systems in Chappaqua and Whitehaven, D.C. We'll let that happen. We don't see any motive there. She didn't intend to do anything wrong. But we're going to go after Trump because we think he could be a Russian asset, because that sounds good. We got a friendly judge. If we go to that friendly judge and say, we think Trump could be a Russian asset, bingo. You get to put his campaign through the ringer and his team through the ringer. And I bring up this fact to say, John Brennan, the people I know who've gotten security clearances, and I know a number, and I actually was a referee for one, or at least interviewed about somebody getting a security clearance, and I know the type of questions that they ask are absurd. They go into your elementary school background, where do you live,
wow. Who
are your friends, do you ever get in trouble, who should we talk to? I mean, they go on and on and on. How in the hell did John Brennan get to be CIA director, given his background, converting to Wahhabi Islam, then before he went back into government, being disciplined for setting up a firm that stole information about Barack Obama and Republican senators, stole passport and State Department files about it. How do you take that guy, who in private practice was prepared to do that, and as Barack Obama say, yeah, I think I'll make him CIA director.
Was that bad, stealing information?
No, it's because he didn't. He probably hasn't let on.
You remember where George has sex with the cleaning lady and the boss, the fires? He's like, was that bad? Should I have knocked on that?
Yeah. So, Brennan, to me, again, no mercy. And this guy is, he must be down to the point where he's got no cards left because he's playing like he could win. And I'm telling you, he's not. It's going to be like, I don't know, Baghdad Bob and the tanks in Baghdad. You know, there are no tanks here. There are tanks right behind them. Or you know, people who are down, sadly, so many people lost their lives in the tsunami. They're down by the beach saying, "Honey, could you get me some SPF 15?" The other one says, "You're not going to need that, actually. Enjoy your last 10 seconds."
Giant wave coming in.
Yeah.
Is it the Baghdad Jedi mind trick with the no tanks?
Yeah. But we have this interesting story in Jim Hoff, Gateway Pundit, basically elaborating. Trump, you know, now loves to give these, as he's heading over to Marine One, gaggles with the press. And Trump was previewing on the way to, I think, South Carolina on Friday. I mean, it's a helicopter, South Carolina. He was saying, you know, this is big. You're not going to believe what's going to come out next. And
he's not great at like keeping a lid on things, right?
I think he's great at getting people
Teasing
interested.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And he's a master Twitter troll
Yeah.
as well. So, so people understand this, when you have what the Clintons are fond of doing, and the Obamas are fond of doing, and even the Bushes are fond of doing, is to say, you know what, we're going to have an investigation. American people says, oh, it's being investigated. That's fantastic. What they don't tell you is that the investigation is not allowed to look at evidence, doesn't have any money, can't interview witnesses, can't threaten anybody, there's no grand jury, it's not a criminal. I mean, that's the approach the Clintons always take. They say to the public, oh yeah, it's been fully investigated.
Well, and everybody doing it is our friends.
Right, yeah, Comey's on top of it. Yeah, it's been fully investigated. So Trump is saying, on the other hand, actually, this could be a real investigation.
Right. They don't like that.
Yeah, they really don't like that. Then we have, I know it's the guy with a strange name at Jack
Prosobic?
Prosobic, yeah. He is one person saying that James Baker, who is, I think, a senior legal guy in the FBI, may have already been flipped and it may already be cooperating. But this guy, Ned Ryan, I have spoken to, is a good guy. And you know, if Ned is saying that did happen, I take Jack's word less seriously. But if Ned's saying it happened, given what we see here, the likelihood that, you know, you are a lawyer after all, Baker, and there are going to be very serious penalties, as we saw for Michael Cohen, for lawyers, members of the bar,
right,
who maybe have engaged in not only corrupt activities initially, but corruptly obstructing the process of getting to the bottom of what happened. Those people are going to go into the worst portions of the Huskow. Now, this is a long Twitter exchange, this next thing. It's, I think, 37 different things. We are not going to go through it because it's too long. But it's a theory that I invite the crowd to investigate and consider. Yeah. I mean, the theory is, the short version, as I understand the theory, is that what Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were trying to cover up is that that the United States was involved funneling weapons into the Middle East and lost control of these weapons, including Stinger missiles.
It's a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
oh, what do you mean? You sent them into a terrorist zone and now you don't know where they were?
Yeah, it's like, kind of like that House of Horrors, the image that you have in the very beginning. Maybe that's going to be the actual new entrance at the Obama Museum about this is what we did. It was a scandal-free presidency. You know, we had Fast and Furious, we had Benghazi, we now have, but this thing weaves it all together and suggests, which I find actually reasonably credible, that they were able to fool the mainstream press, who they joke about. I remember Ben Rhodes and others were joking about how it's so easy to deceive the people who are working in the Obama White House because they're just, you know, sycophants to Barack Obama and the idea of unregulated globalism. So they were able to pull the wool over the mainstream media's eyes, but they didn't pull the wool over the Taliban's eyes. And this thread alleges that, and it puts something together for me, the reason the United States was willing to exchange a traitor, Bo Bergdahl, people died looking for Bo Bergdahl, for 5 hardened Taliban generals who are now back on the fight against the United States and allies. The reason they were willing to do that, this thread alleges, is that the Taliban, the Afghanistanis, figured out what was really going on and blackmailed the United States and said, you give us these people or we're going to tell you the truth about what happened. We're going to tell the public the truth about what happened with these Stinger missiles.
But why would the public believe the Taliban?
Well, that's a good point. Maybe they wouldn't, but the point is the Obama administration fell for it. I mean, this is how many unequal exchanges have we seen? There's no reason. You desert, and then Americans die looking for you, and you get a call from, if I were the president, you get a call from somebody in Afghanistan saying, we'll give you Bergdahl back. And I say, I'll give you the clap. I'll arrange for somebody to give you the clap.
Obama will go over there and give it to him personally.
Right, before I can take Bergdahl back. So it just...
Where is Bergdahl now?
He's probably teaching at Yale Law School. I don't know. But anyway, this for people who are interested in trying to get to the bottom of these complex matters, it's really worth going through that.
The Moriartys have confirmed that Stinger missile aspect of that.
Yeah. Well, then this is an even better one in here. This I've never heard, and this could be disinformation. It could be wrong, but it's a very lengthy piece. But it's interesting, and among other things, it alleges that the whistleblower, and again, I don't know what the UNS report is or whatever this thing is. I don't know who Israel Shamir is. I don't know, if this is way out there. But it goes in depth into the theory that the situation in Ukraine has been corrupt for a long time. That I know. I've been there 15 times. I'm not exaggerating. And it just basically explains that along the way, people in both parties, Woolsey, and Democrats and others.
What about Woolsey?
Woolsey and others. Go through the article. It's a long piece, but it talks about how grifting globalists have been trying to milk the IMF, milk money that was destined to go inside Ukraine, get the IMF to give Ukraine the money, and then steal the money in one or more many ways.
Charles, I don't mean to derail, and I know that we're on a tight schedule, but this thing with Woolsey, he's part of that London Policy Center.
Right.
And that, I'm not so confident in that thing. And,
I wouldn't be confident at all.
But Sidney Powell is part of it, and I really like Sidney, so I'm confused by some of those, I just wonder to what extent that thing is a good thing and maybe not a good thing.
It's not a good thing, I don't think. But in essence, what this article argues is a few key things. One, that Biden and Kerry's family were milking the Ukraine, milking money that was raised by multilateral organizations to go into the Ukraine, that people were very interested in covering that up. And then it goes down an alley that I know nothing about, claiming that in Ukraine there were some suspicious fires where ammunition dumps supposedly blew up.
Oh,
and
really?
the allegation is that actually, I'm aware of this trick where you say you've got something I need to blow up, let's say medicine that's past due or whatever, and I better incinerate it, and you charge somebody money to incinerate, and you take that money, and then you take the bad medicine and you sell it in Africa, or you sell it someplace that doesn't care about standards. Similarly, this article is alleging that the ammunition and weapons that were supposedly blown up in Ukraine instead ended up in Syria. And so I don't know what the truth is here, but I do know that there are very few actually curious journalists, investigators in the mainstream press who want to look at anything.
Right.
And I also know that we don't know the whole truth about how Republicans and Democrats have been plundering in the former Soviet Union, former Eastern Europe, and around the world, swamp-like for decades, and why nobody ever gets caught, why our children and grandchildren ourselves are running up these gigantic debts to fund big government deficits and big military budgets, and nobody checks anything. I do know that that's the case, and that's an environment where a lot of fraud is going to happen. So I would recommend that article. It could be wrong. But now we get to one I don't like to dump as hard as I'm now going to dump on Hillary Clinton. But let's look at this Daily Mail one. And note to the Daily Mail, please clean up your website.
What's wrong with it? Oh, too many ads?
Yeah,
all over the
pop-ups
place?
and all this kind of stuff. But, whenever Hillary and Bill Clinton decide to go to a funeral involving black people, Hillary's Southern accent comes in, and then Hillary's starts quoting from the Bible. And here, Bill and Hillary Clinton, the grifters supremo, who have monetized their entire lives of public service, dare at a funeral to compare, and also wearing purple, her purple house coat, they dare to compare Donald Trump to one of the most corrupt kings in Israel, supposedly, and his wife Jezebel. Hillary is going to call Melania Trump Jezebel. I mean, talk about being rich.
That's funny because Kevin Shipp always calls Hillary Jezebel, and I'm somewhat ignorant with Bible references. I didn't really know what he was talking about.
But you know your hot sauce, right?
I know hot sauce, Charles, definitely. I have one right here in my purse. Oh, wait a minute. I don't carry a purse.
Oh, yes, you do. Nice, nice banana yellow jacket as well.
Oh, Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. So then we have, this is on a more serious note. Somebody sent this to me, this article here, and it's really, frankly, disgusting. I thought General Electric couldn't sink any lower than it already has, but what they're now doing, according to this article, and I believe it, what they're doing is they are cutting the pension benefits of General Electric retirees and future retirees to try to save the company today. Now, I just don't sign on to that at all. I'm a capitalist and I'm an investor. The most valuable people in an organization are the employees. Talent is scarce. There are lots of people who would like to show and work, but you get a valuable person. Somebody who's a hardworking, thoughtful person is somebody who should be prized and taken care of and rewarded. So the word spread, it's in your naked self-interest as a capitalist to do that. To run a ship today, General Electric, where the stock has gone, when I got involved with it, from 40 down to 9, right? It's gigantic debt. Obviously, I'm not an investor in General Electric, God willing.
Why not?
Well, I'm an investor in some funds, so they may have shares of GE, unfortunately, but I would never knowingly buy.
It's locked at 9, Charles, GE.
That's on a good day. So when you go ahead and you have these people who've retired, they work for you their entire careers, and they get a letter in the mail saying, because we fucked up, we're cutting your retirement benefits.
Have a nice day.
That is just outrageous behavior.
Yeah.
And I don't think, Elizabeth Warren wants to flap her wings around about something. That's one where I'd probably say, depending on what she said, this is one where Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and progressives could look at this and say, no, if you're in the for-profit business and you're going to pay a lot of executives at GE millions of dollars per year for destroying shareholder value, you cannot go ahead and then rip off retirees who are long gone.
Isn't it also when you get hired, the retirement benefits are sort of like, don't you have a contract? They're just like reneging on the deal.
Again, they have too much money and too many crooked lawyers, and you're sitting there and you worked at some plant in Michigan or whatever.
GE for breach of
Yeah,
contract.
exactly.
Now, this is Deepwater Horizon, right? That's just
I think this is just the name of the
disaster. GE has nothing to do with that. Got it. I was confused.
But this really is an area where, why isn't Harvard Business School? When I was at Harvard Business School, GE was doing very well. And in fact, the dean of Harvard Business School was on the board of GE. It was a long tradition. And, they had to read case after case about mighty GE and why it was so great and so forward-looking and isn't this wonderful? Why isn't Harvard Business School and the business schools and the law schools and the professors, why aren't they going and, putting these people through the equivalent of the modern-day rack, the Inquisition? How could people at the board let this happen? It's just outrageous.
Yeah. Charles, one of the neighbor's kids who, when I first moved in here, was a swaddling little baby and now is way taller than me. He just came home from Yale the other day. I was talking to him in the hallway. I told him to stay away from the skull and bones. He said, yeah, they're really weird.
Now I got to leave the room. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so the next one here, this is pretty funny.
Totally unbelievable. Totally believable.
Yeah. You are scientifically inclined. Go down this. This is from Irish Tech News. In other Irish Tech News, researchers in Ireland are going to produce graphene using whiskey.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, exactly.
You drink enough of it and you just don't need graphene.
You go into your boss and you say, listen, here's what I got this great plan. You know, the fact that I love whiskey should not enter into your thinking. I need you to let me buy $1 million of whiskey, and I'll see it. I'll see it, say 5 years, and I'll let you know about this graphene.
Well, graphene is interesting. As I understand, it's the strongest and lightest material known. It's like individual atomic bonds, and they're using it for space materials and lightweight, aerospace stuff.
Well, I don't know what that is, but I know what Irish whiskey is, and I've got to say that I don't particularly like Irish whiskey. I think it's harsh, but maybe that does explain why you can make graphene out of it. But
right.
So one last point here. This our foot faulter in chief, Mr. Soros, has been in the news. Do you think this is an arrogant man? I am very proud of the enemies I have. And he's predicting, maybe he's working on the Irish whiskey graphene project, but...
I don't understand why they didn't cast this guy as Emperor Palpatine. There's a new Star Wars movie coming out. They wouldn't even need the prosthetic eye weirdness.
Yeah. He's pushing, he's almost 90, I think, at this point.
When's he going to die already?
He's wearing the purple tie, of course, a sign of the resistance.
And so Hillary was wearing the purple. He's wearing the purple. Yeah, everybody wears purple.
Exactly. And if you go into, we've got it later in the show, but he was very much involved, Soros and some other multi-billionaires, mega-billionaires, setting up the Obama presidency. Mm-hmm. So my brother suggested that, my middle brother suggested that we try to make it simple for people. There's so many videos out there we've done, how do you simply tell the tale of the Clinton Foundation, right, and why it's a problem?
I don't know.
The simple fact is it's a public charity, which means under U.S. law it has to have audits, it has to have filings. They've never done those properly. Never. Since October 23rd, 1997. It's now 23 years of no valid findings. 23 years.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, Charles.
Right? And I don't mean to do any disservice to the many other shows that we've done, but if you had a week and you wanted to watch one show a day, in the next week, this first one, Mrs. Bill thing, is a classic, and it will only take you a minute to watch that one.
Yes.
You can maybe watch that one, and then each of these days, and Walking Tall on the same day, and then Oh No, Mrs. Bill, and then Croc. But you watch these, and you see that we've actually been going back to June of 2017, telling an enormous tale that this presidential charity that houses the records of the Clinton Foundation doesn't lawfully exist. And the people in the FBI are saying, well, that's fine with us. CIA, even better for us, And it just goes on and on and on. Media say, oh, it doesn't exist. That's just like television. Nothing that we say exists either.
Right.
So we're fine. We're down with that.
Yeah. Charles, this Oh No, Mrs. Bill video definitely is the most evidence-rich video that we've produced.
It's very well done. It's very, very well done. And you spent a lot of time on that, and
it took a couple
sorry
weeks.
You had to. But
no, it's a labor of love.
But in essence, what this thing has done, it was supposed to be a presidential library and research center in Little Rock, and they said, "F that. We're going to go around the world, and we're going to assert that we can solve all these problems, and then suckers are going to give us billions of dollars, and we're going to steal it. And we're particularly going to go to Africa, because for some reason we like to go to African American funerals and pretend we're black, and then get on private planes and go around the world and pretend that we're good, and then get all kinds of real money that we pretend goes into the foundation, but in fact put into fancy houses and private planes and bank accounts offshore." And James Comey and Robert Mueller, they want to invest. They hear that Trump is a Russian asset. They don't want to look at this. The mainstream media doesn't want to look at this because this involves math.
What happened with the Singh brothers last week? Anything? Are they?
Nothing. They're probably singing.
Yeah.
Castrato. Now, this is one interesting thing here. I just want to quit this. I thought to look up this CEO, Kevin Thurman. Now, Kevin, I followed you on Twitter. You may not have noticed that. You don't have that many followers, about 2,800 followers. You're going to have a lot of time on your hands, Kevin, if you are stupid enough. Now, you're a Rhodes Scholar. If you are stupid enough to put another signature of yours, because you've filed all kinds of false and materially misleading New York State forms and other forms around the country and world, if you are stupid enough to put your John Hancock your Kevin Thurm, on the 990 that's going to go in for 2018 by November 15th, 2019, you're a lawyer, you might want to go back over the RICO statute. I made it easy for you. I'm sure you have you can go read that RICO statute and you can ask yourself, what do you think a powerful government like the United States or the UK or a bunch of governments, who do you think they're going to attack first? Dopey Andrew Kessel is still there. I mean, he is toast. He is burnt toast as the CFO who came in on April Fool's Day 2004. He's an idiot. You, on the other hand, Kevin, were a standout student at Tufts. You became a Rhodes Scholar. You went to Harvard Law School. And you have been in this Clinton Foundation. You work for Donna Shalala Land. And she brought you in. She was the corrupt CEO of the Clinton Foundation after the preceding interim CEO and after Braverman and after Bruce Lindsay. Never a good sign in a foundation where you see all this rollover in CEOs. You, Kevin, have a chance to spend the rest of your life in prison. If you put
the price is right.
if you want to put your finger, allow your signature to go on these 990s, which have to, and the New York State forms and the California forms, your signature needs to go on these forms. And if you sign these forms this year, you're going to prison. You are definitely going to prison, Kevin. And, we might visit you, but we're not going to bring you any food. We're not going to bring you any treats. We'll just bring some cameras.
Yeah, you can talk to them through the glass.
Exactly.
Everybody's getting talked to through the glass.
So with that, what we're going to bring out, there's been a lot of talk of whistleblowers and evidence, okay? Mm-hmm. We're now going to tell the story, put some pieces together here, of a real State Department whistleblower, unlike this fictitious whistleblower who nobody needs to talk to anymore, that's instigated this Trump impeachment inquiry. This fictitious whistleblower may just be a Ukrainian corrupt official, not even a member of the State Department. We're going to deliver, we don't know the name yet, we're going to give the crowd enough evidence in this broadcast to maybe figure out who the real State Department whistleblower is. But this is an excerpt from James Stewart's book, Deep State, just came out, page 97. And it relates the tale that Matthew Axelrod, we're going to show you who he is in a second. Matthew Axelrod was a very senior Justice Department official, though he was a young guy. He was the deputy to Sally Yates. On the 12th of August 2016, this guy, this consigliere, calls up another idiot, McCabe, to say, we have serious concerns about the work you're doing at the FBI on the Clinton Foundation. August 12th, 2016, okay? The book confirms what is in other reporting. Cheryl Atkinson talks about it. 4 different field offices have been looking at it. And the FBI is basically told, no subpoenas, you can have a pretend investigation, but the Justice Department was getting concerned. August 12th, 2016. So 2 weeks or so after, or however many weeks after the famed accidental tarmac meeting with Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch, where I'm sure Bill didn't say to Loretta Lynch, if you let this thing go on, okay, you're going to be dead to the Clinton machine come January 20th, 2016.
Maybe dead, actually.
Yeah, I don't think something like that happened. I think it's totally logical that in the heat on the tarmac in June, July, whenever it was. In Phoenix, June 27th in Phoenix, that's right. That in that very hot place, you're going to be sitting inside a jet for 30 minutes talking about your grandchildren, your golf game, and what a coincidence here bullshit.
Well, talking about grandchildren in a conversation is if you ever want to see yours again, right. Here's how it's going to go.
Yeah, exactly. So this guy, Axelrod, describes himself in his own words. I returned to the Department of Justice in February 2015. When did Hillary Clinton announce her campaign? April 2015. So this guy goes in. When did I write my piece about the IRS? March 16th, 2015. This guy goes back from practice, but he takes a year off in private practice, comes back to the DOJ right before Hillary runs to work to be the principal associate to the Deputy Attorney General. So this is the guy who makes the Department of Justice run for Sally Yates. And afterwards, where does this guy go? He defends Sally Yates, remember, who after Trump was inaugurated, she refused to follow his orders, so he had her fired. He leaves to go to Linklaters. And what is Linklaters? Linklaters is one of the preeminent English law firms. And what is his specialty? White-collar defense practice. So this guy, Matthew Axelrod, should be somebody that the FBI now and Durham is all over. What was this guy doing from February 2015 until February 2017? Exactly what was he doing? Who was he threatening? Who was he encouraging not to go full bore into this Clinton Foundation, and why? So this conversation occurs on the 12th of August 2016. Let's go to the next page. These are just some of the stories that either I was directly involved with as being interviewed, or they're talking about me or whatever. These are 10 stories that occurred between the 5th of May 2016 and the day before this Matthew Axelrod tells the Justice Department, tells the FBI, don't investigate the Clinton Foundation. Okay? Are you kidding me?
That's a funny thing to tell them.
Don't all these stories in the press, you don't want to look at those.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that,
yeah.
Right? And we know, I mean, through looking through other files, we know that the way the FBI seems to work is they monitor the press, they see stories of interest, and then they go batch it. If it involves Trump, involves a Republican, they say, oh, we better investigate that.
When do they fit in the bar parties?
Or they see me, as mentioned, connected, and a Wall Street Journal mentions me connected to Peter Smith. Next thing you know, I'm visited by FBI agents instantly.
That was crazy.
Right? And so here are all these different stories. Every single one of these is a story. Remember that people, in the same period, they're prosecuting Corinne Brown, July of 2016, for a $1 million charity fraud. Got $100 million here, $50 million there, $1 billion there. And they're going to say, oh, no. Let's let Hillary be president of the United States. This is right before Axelrod says, don't investigate the Clinton Foundation. You're too close to the election.
But why do they listen? I mean, Matthew Axelrod, he's just a lawyer. Why is
No. He was in the Justice Department when he did. He was the guy. Sally Yates was running the Justice Department as Deputy Attorney General.
Okay, he left the Justice Department to go to the law firm.
After Trump comes in, he's like, well, I know you want a white-collar defense lawyer. I know why you need me, because I'm guilty as hell, too.
Well, is he doing that, Charles, so that because outside of the DOJ, in a private law firm, he can now create interference from the outside?
Absolutely, and it's an English law firm. And we believe, our suspicion here is that the government that was really interfering in both in the 2015 and 16 primaries in general was not Russia. It was not even Ukraine. Seriously, Ukraine may have been involved. It was the government of the United Kingdom, right? So we go to the next page.
Is that why the Queen looks so nervous when Trump comes around?
So these are excerpts. The first excerpt is from Horowitz's report of last June, 2018. And here it says that the government policies that you don't intervene within 60 or 90 days of Election Day. August 12th, it's actually 60 days. It's not 90 days. And August 12th is well ahead, is many more than 60 days before the Election Day on November 8th.
Yeah.
Okay? So again, this recites the differential approach. There's in page 377, 378 of the PDF. Horowitz attempts to justify why, on the one hand, they give Hillary Clinton a pass for espionage and for stealing government records and for simultaneously controlling, they may not have known, but controlling the Clinton Foundation. They give her a pass on that. But they say, with the Clinton Foundation, we also don't really think there's anything there for the Clinton Foundation. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, so why bother investigating?
Right.
We thought about it, and it's probably fine. We don't need to investigate that.
I mean, Comey, he's the guy who missed it the first time. He tells us there's no point in all this. And also, you look at this, it says the principles could be reasonably avoided. And there was nothing about the Clinton Foundation investigation that was time sensitive. All these excuses why they're not going to investigate. And right in this time frame, they're ginning up Crossfire Hurricane. They're going after Trump. You know, who knows how many people were investigated and why? Who knows how many people knew about it? But it just, the double standard here reeks. And remember, this is a document that was produced by Horowitz and then redacted and edited under the leadership of Rosenstein.
So what do you think that means about Mr. Horowitz?
He's malleable.
Covering for them.
Well, I think he's in a place where he does his best job, and then people above his pay grade say, you know, this is the document that's going to go out there. So now we've got to go back.
But if he's the Inspector General, isn't he supposed to be above?
No, he's not.
The hell's the point of it?
You know, the point is to cover this shit up so that people at the top of the food chain can milk multilateral aid organizations and governments.
Paula Jones is watching the show right now.
Hey, Paula.
That's cool.
Good to meet you.
Yeah.
I met her in person.
We should invite her to be a guest on a future show.
Anytime, Paula.
Please email truth@crowdsourcethetruth.org.
Yeah. So if we go to the next page. All right. This is language from the same book, James B. Stewart, Deep State, okay? And in it he says, their insistence they could run a foundation, he says, accepting major contributions was a problem for them. It wasn't a foundation. It wasn't a Bill Gates Foundation. It was a public charity, and a family is not allowed to control a public charity. It just isn't.
Bill Gates?
Right. Bill Gates is not a public charity.
No,
Bill and Hillary Clinton are a public charity. A family cannot control a public charity.
Right.
So here's the language from Jim Stewart, who's not a stupid guy. He's won a Pulitzer Prize, deservedly, for several, well, at least one Pulitzer Prize.
I don't believe in that Pulitzer.
No, but he's a shrewd guy and a good writer. There was no denying the allure, he says, might yield future benefits. And then he says, the foundation was staffed with Clinton campaign officials and loyal allies, including Abedin, Inhuman Being, and Cheryl Mills, 2 Hillary aides at the center of the email affair. A public charity cannot be staffed by political campaign operatives. It can't be. Okay? He's admitting that he believes it was, right? And it said, the Boston Globe, he cites an article, Boston Globe, praising their good causes. Evidently, the Boston Globe devoted no resources to checking any of the legal paperwork of this foundation that was not allowed to do anything else other than engage in work in Little Rock. Then I love this. Despite McCabe's reaction to Axelrod, where he was pissed that Axelrod told him to sort of back off the investigation, neither he nor anyone else at FBI headquarters was all that impressed by the foundation case. That's because they were watching porn all day long. I mean, how could you not be impressed by the Clinton Foundation case, given everything that's out in the public domain? And the reason is almost everybody at FBI headquarters was corrupt. That's the reason. And they're trying to say the evidence in Clinton cash was highly circumstantial. Peter Schweitzer was not focused on the Clinton Foundation the way we have been. He was focused on pay-for-play corruption, which is tougher to trace. The evidence on fraud at the Clinton Foundation is not circumstantial. There is, in contrast, there's no evidence that the Clinton Foundation is anything other than a fraud. There's no audit. There are no tax returns. There's no tax return for 1997. None of the numbers work for any piece of the Clinton Foundation. And then I love this. She's well advised. How likely was it that she'd risk yet another scandal, Hillary Clinton, he says, let alone criminal prosecution for trading favors for contributions to the foundation? She expected to win. She expected to bury this thing. Of course, it was highly likely that she had to risk this. She'd announced for president. She was the candidate. Yeah. She couldn't say, well, you know what, I've just discovered a problem with the Clinton Foundation. I better just confess and go to prison and spend the rest of my life there instead of in the White House. You know? The election was not less than 2 months away, as he writes in this book. He's got his math wrong. And then he characterizes the Clinton Foundation. He says, in Little Rock, where the foundation conducted most of its work, not true, the agents there felt, it says, the foundation was nominally headquartered in Little Rock. No, it was actually headquartered in Little Rock, though they didn't bother to comply with any laws that apply in Little Rock or around the world where they operated. So you read this and you say, Jim Stewart, this book is an apology for the deep state. You're smarter than this. And as in the case of Joe Conason, who likes to indict the Clinton Foundation with his work, This is just helpful to our cause of saying, obviously the Clinton Foundation was successful in hiding the true nature of their operations from very smart people who elected to publish a book filled with crap.
It's actually the most expensive IMAX theater ever.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So now we're going to show you a real whistleblower. Okay. On the next, I couldn't fit it in this page, but on the next page, we have a link. It's in part 23 of 36 of the Hillary R. Clinton FBI vault files. These are selected excerpts from pages 121 to 132 of that link, okay? And this is basically, a letter comes in to Dopey James Comey, addressed January 10th, 2016, okay? And the heading on the letter is Evidence About Private Emails Used to Transmit Classified U.S. Government National Security and the Lies Told by Hillary Clinton and Others in an Attempt to Conceal Her Breach of National Security. This is from an actual senior State Department career official, sends this letter in, addressed to James Comey. And
Put that in the bottom drawer.
And what does Dopey say? I can't look at that. That'll make me look bad. So anyway, he never answers the letter. So this guy, we've talked about it before, this man, it turns out, goes in on the 27th of January.
Wait, do we know who it is now?
We don't yet know who it is. But I'm just saying, I found, we talked about this letter before, but we did not in this depth. And now, knowing all that I know, I was able to go back. So this letter comes in, and on the third paragraph or so, it says, is to provide evidence which should lead to the conviction of former Secretary of State Hillary, misspelled, Clinton, for lying to a Congressional House Committee investigating the situation surrounding what happened on 11 September 2011. That's how the letter opens, okay? And this letter, remember, was sent January 10th, 2016, using the mail. We don't know if it was inside Washington, D.C. to Virginia or where exactly, but it may have been sent across state lines, okay? It comes into Comey. This is way before he makes the declination decision, July 7th, 2016. This is January 10th, 2016. It's before serious primaries, okay? There's a lot of text in here, but it says, I carefully watched Hillary's testimony to the Congressional Committee. I watched her tell the lie in her testimony. Okay? That's how the letter opens up, and it's 12 pages long. And you'd think, I maybe should get some FBI agents on this to check this out. I mean, it's after, of course, the Russians come to the FBI and say, you got a problem with the Tsarnaev brothers. They say, fuck you, you're from Russia, we don't believe you. And then they blow up the Boston Marathon. I mean, what is it with this FBI leadership under Obama in particular? What went wrong with these people? They get this in time to do something about it, in time to maybe have Bernie Sanders be the nominee. And if they let Sanders be the nominee, much as I think the world would have fallen apart if that happened, he might well have beaten Trump.
Yeah, but Charles, the new Millennium Falcon Lego Star Wars is out. James Comey can't be expected to actually do any law enforcement.
And what is it with these white-soled shoes as well?
The guy is about to be arrested for one of the most serious crimes in the world, and he's playing with Star Wars toys, and you're worried about the shoes?
And he's like, no, he's saying, I'm the former head of the FBI. Can I take these with me to Guantanamo?
Yeah. No Star Wars toys allowed, unfortunately, James Comey.
Yeah. So we go, this is, we take a step back here. Remember, Rudy Giuliani, we could say what you want about him. There's elements about him I don't like. But Giuliani made his career fighting corruption, fighting the mob, and then fighting Mark Rich. He got Mark Rich indicted. Now this, if you hit this piece, it says that, it's bemoaning Rudy Giuliani becoming a fixer and, maybe getting too much involved in the high living and this and that. I don't, I'm not in a position to evaluate all of Rudy Giuliani's pros and cons. I don't like some of the people he's hanging around with. I don't like the idea of monetizing your public service later as a lawyer and then a security expert and the way and maybe a consultant and an investor. I don't like that at all. But, you have to, when you think about Rudy Giuliani being attacked, he's got a long list of people he put in prison, and indicted and trained the full force of U.S. resources against, and a lot of those people would love nothing more than payback. So when we think about criticism today of Rudy Giuliani, we got to see it in context, okay? We go back into the slide. We have a truly atrocious human being, in my opinion, Jeffrey Sachs, who is somebody who has been the architect of unregulated globalism. If you look, this Lou Rockwell is a pundit and I think author. He has this, I love this piece. It's a great title. Where it goes in, yeah, it refers to, it goes through Jeffrey Sachs' career. But basically, he's gone around the world spouting off about how unregulated globalism is going to be fantastic. Yeah, it's been fantastic for him.
Right.
He's made all kinds of money, but he's been kicked out of country after country. And the fact is that unregulated globalism makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, of the 200 or so nations in the world, many have small populations, many don't have much in the way of resources. There's vast differentials between Russia, China, and India, the US, and other nations. And to say that we're all sort of the same, we're on the same bell curve, and let's just treat this as a global project, and we'll let somebody from Romania run the world. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And Jeffrey Sachs is intellectually, in my opinion, dishonest, and worse. I wrote this article for a conservative broad, it's called the Boston Broadside, when Hillary, in a short period of time, was accepting awards from Harvard and Yale, two places I have some familiarity with. In one very short period, she's getting a Lifetime Achievement Award here and another plaudit there. And the basic thing about Harvard and Yale is it's now, these and other large, well-endowed institutions have it totally rigged under globalism. It used to be mainly Americans went to these schools. Now it's all over the world people go to these schools. They didn't expand the schools all that much. So there are many more students trying to get roughly the same number of places. They're able to jack up the salaries for the professors who have tenure, who can't be fired. People like Steve Schwartzman and the Billionaire of the Week Club are happy to give Harvard $200 million here and $400 million there and whatever. So the endowment builds up. They don't report to anybody. And I would submit to you, to make a tough case, I would say that what Harvard, Yale, and these endowed institutions have been doing really since about 2001 is selling nothing more than pure propaganda, supporting unregulated globalism, because it works for them. Their professors get to do all these wild schemes. They're never going to lose money the way they're set up. There are always going to be many more people interested in going to Harvard and Yale and places than there are seats. Many more rich people are going to want to bribe their way in. I say bribe.
Felicity Huffman.
Donate their way in or bribe their way in. And it's past time for the United States government, the IRS, to take a hard look at why these well-endowed institutions continue to deserve tax exemption. Harvard and Yale were established before there was an IRS, centuries before there was an IRS, been around for a long time. Lots of loyal people would support those schools. Why should the taxpayer support the school?
Yeah.
And why should we encourage the spewing out of unvetted propaganda as fact?
Also, everybody who graduates from there makes a ton of money, so why the hell should broke people who have to pay taxes help rich people get jobs to make a ton of money? That makes no sense at all.
It would make sense if the universities were actually devoted to advancing the frontiers of knowledge. If that's what they were doing, I would say, yeah, okay, fine. But if what you're doing is you're churning out hedge fund and private equity and merger guys and bankers, and because I'm not so certain that these are trade schools. You don't get the plumbing. The University of Plumbing, if there is such a thing, does not get a tax exemption for teaching people to become plumbers.
Apex Tech, not.
I don't think so.
501c3.
And
garden face, brick face, and stucco.
Yeah. when you think about it, it also is particularly revolting when you think of Haiti. And you look at this as a story just out today. Yeah. California is almost dark, but tomorrow Haiti may well go dark. This is a country that Bill Clinton arranged or donors to send, some say as much as $13 billion in 2010.
So wait a minute, no electricity in Haiti?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's hopelessly corrupt. They stole all the money.
And they can't run a power plant?
Well, I mean, the volume of money that went into Haiti, $13 billion may not seem like that much money to an American, an American context, but in Haiti, that's a gigantic amount of money. And now these unregulated globalists, these people who take credit for the Clinton Foundation being a good thing. Here's Haiti, the country that was so grievously hurt in 2010, January, is now, thanks to Bill Clinton's attention, and after the recent Puerto Rico hurricanes and other things, the Clintons rushed to any one of these Caribbean islands and they say, we'll help you like we helped Haiti. They helped them so much. They helped themselves.
Charles, when Hillary and Chelsea had that book signing a week or two ago, I went over there and I didn't get in because the books were already sold out. You had to buy it online, but there were a group of Haitian people.
Oh, yeah.
They hate her.
Oh, yeah.
And I interviewed one of them, but prior to that, I interviewed somebody who pulled the microphone out of the phone because she didn't like the questions I was asking her boyfriend, who knew nothing about why he didn't like Donald Trump. And the sound came out really bad. There was one guy who had a lot of information. I didn't put it out yet.
Yeah, you should.
The sound is...
Yeah. So here's one thing I just want people to focus on. The business model of Soros and the Podesta brothers and others seems to me, as far as I can tell in part, profiting from natural disasters. Now this is an email. If we go down, this is the 7th of May, 2015. And this is a time, just to refresh people's stuff for a second. This is from somebody, I think, who works for Podesta to John, saying it's okay to stop at the apartment.
That's weird.
What apartment is it? It's George Soros' apartment. And if you go into this WikiLeaks, you'll see, if you punch in Soros, or if you punch in, I can't remember now the name of the family that founded ProPublica, there were quite a few meetings in 15 and 16 of these billionaires, basically rigging things to control. This is a Hillary time frame. Then you go further back in 2008, there were quite a few meetings of these same people setting up the Obama administration to be populated by those loyal to Soros, those loyal to Podesta, those loyal to the billionaire class. And people in the crowd need to think about going back into this WikiLeaks Podesta emails to tracing out a chronology. Corey Diggs, for example, would be good at doing that. But the degree to which Soros, with his willingness to put hundreds of millions of dollars to send it towards elections in this country and other countries, billions of dollars, is somebody, when we think about the dangers money poses to democracy, Exhibit A in that should be George Soros. Exhibit B should be Tony Podesta, who actually has been very quiet since he was...
Tony has.
Yeah.
Yeah, John's been going to New Zealand and stuff like a couple days before they shoot up the mosque. Who is Aaron Sepp?
I think that's just either an assistant for Podesta or an assistant for... Yeah, it's an assistant for Podesta. So if we... Now we're going to take you through... before we get there. When we think now about what we're going to expose in terms of this whistleblower, the State Department whistleblower's complaint, you have to ask yourself, why was Dennis Cheng, we went down to his 77 Water Street office, why did the Clinton Foundation set up an office by July of 2011 and pluck the Deputy Chief of Protocol of the State Department out of the State Department, insert that person into the office to raise an endowment? Why did he do that starting in July of 2011? Was it in part a contingency plan in case Hillary had to run if Barack couldn't make it in 2012? Was it also possibly...
What do you mean couldn't make it?
Well, they knew a lot of stuff was going wrongly against them. They still had to... Barack was going to, would be hands down the primary, the designated primary person to run in 2012. But what if one of these scandals caught up? What if people on the mainstream...
scandal-free.
What if people in the mainstream press actually did some work? So they made sure that didn't happen.
No chance, yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. Pushing on an open door. But I think we go back and trace this timeline back to really 2008, when Doug Band set up Teneo, the precursors to Teneo, and others began the process of setting themselves up to milk the State Department so they could then milk the White House. We got to go back over this timeline. So if we go to the next page, Jason. Okay, this is the same letter. It goes on to say it's going to provide evidence of criminal action by Hillary and her personal and official staff including some who were also acting under the pay of other persons and organizations, including the Clinton Foundation.
Sounds like Huma Abedin.
Right, but it says, this is a letter dated the 10th of January 2016. I've been pounding in the press since 16 March 2015. There's an issue. Comey was contacted, we know from the Horowitz report, in May of 2015, issues in the Clinton Foundation. They wait till early January to open an investigation, and in comes this whistleblower, the 10th of January, just when they're opening 2 FBI investigations into the Clinton Foundation. This whistleblower says, I have evidence tying to the Clinton Foundation.
It's going to get him killed.
Right, and what does Comey do? He says, no point. Let's not look at that. And then look at this. I personally know, remember this whistleblower that's triggering the Trump impeachment inquiry has no firsthand knowledge.
Right.
I personally know many of the highest ranking officers that were clearly involved with knowing of, permitting, allowing, ordering activities, and concealing, covering up these criminal acts on behalf of Hillary Clinton. Only a vigorous prosecution of Hillary Clinton and other employees involved with these crimes might prevent the repeat of unelected employees from putting the national security of the United States at risk. That's
there's the
pretty
problem.
Well, yeah, there's no
They
problem.
don't want to prevent the repeat. They want to enable it.
That would screw up our plan.
Yeah.
But you look at this, and John Durham and Bill Barr will not get their job done right unless they go over this ground. Who was this person? Why? We look here at this FBI vault, Jason, this one here. I want to make sure that this is the right one. Yeah. This gives you the whole vault file for the skeptics who want to say there's nothing there. So far, there are 36 parts to the Hillary R. Clinton investigation. Week by week, more and more come out. In part 6, you don't have to hit it now, is evidence at page 10 of the, starting at page 10 or thereabouts, of what happened on the 27th of January 2016 when the whistleblower came in. And we're taking this information now from part 23, starting at page 121 to page 132.
That's a multi-part thing.
Yeah. So let's think about, so Comey's in the chair, the big dog gets the letter on it's dated January 10th, 2016. Does he have anything he should be telling anybody that might conflict him as he pursues evidence of the Clinton Foundation being a fraud? Might it be conflicting that he personally led an investigation for 4 years into the Clinton Foundation that found nothing when it was obviously there in front of him? Here's the fraud, James. No, I don't see it. Here's the corruption. Nope, can't see it. James, your eyes are closed. No, they're not. You just think, I'm pretending they're closed. I mean, it's ridiculous that this guy would have spent 4 years looking at the thing, then be sitting in the chair as FBI director, and nobody would say, Jim, you fucked up that investigation 2001 to 5. You're not fucking this one up. You can't be in charge of this. Right? There's no grown up there. Instead, it's Matthew Axelrod is probably saying, Comey, listen, see it over here? You're going to stand up and dance. You're going to dance doing like I don't see anything dance. That's what you're going to do for me because Loretta Lynch and the big boy, Barack Obama, don't want you going here. So as I think about this long pattern going back before October 23rd, 1997, and I consider the way in which the Justice Department and the FBI went after Michael Cohen, I see no difference between Michael Cohen and David Kendall. Indeed, I see Michael Cohen as being less potentially culpable than David Kendall.
Michael Cohen reminds me of Droopy Dog more.
Right, exactly. David Kendall, has been at the center, he's epicenter of the Clinton Foundation and Clinton frauds for decades. He has enriched himself and his firm. He's paid, his firm has, I would argue, paid off politicians in both parties, giving them off-market book deals. And who knows how much money, as a result, Williams & Connolly makes for itself. Now, when you think about this, on the way out of the White House in 2008 and 9, George W. Bush got a book deal through Williams & Connolly.
What did he write about?
Decision points. And Laura Bush got another book, off-market book deals. They get, $6 million, $8 million for writing a
get
book.
Off a manslaughter conviction. What was her book about?
I don't know, but the point, what they do here, it's just so noble. They hire some schmuck. They say, all right, you over here, I'll give you $200,000. You write the book, and I'll just collect the advance for 6, 10, 12, 60, or whatever the number is. And nobody in the left talks about that inequality and says, wait a minute, why does the president, why does Michelle and Barack, why do they get a check for 60 or $65 million and they just pay ghostwriters to write these books, and the ghostwriter doesn't say, now wait a minute, why don't I get half?
Right, they're getting $65 million for somebody else to write a book about them?
That's how all these books are done. They don't write these books.
Excellent idea, Joe. I wonder if I could work that out.
You run for president. Jason for president. But honestly, as you're sitting there as Obama, and you're told, you wake up at the crack of 10 in the morning on Monday, and you're told, hey, look, good news, Barack. I mean, you got a book deal coming. Michelle and you might get $60 million. The only thing is, the guy who's going to be representing you in this special deal you can't get from anybody else is the same person who's going to be implicated if we look hard at the Clinton Foundation scandal. So we obviously can't do that if you want your $60 million book deal, which is, I suspect, how this actually works.
It seems to be the case.
And it's not just it's not just the Obamas. It's the Bushes. It's certainly the Clintons. I mean, explain to me. I have tried. I love reading. I have tried to read Bill Clinton's tome, My Lies or My Life or whatever it's called, and it's 1,000 pages long. And it's
hypnagogic effect.
It's exactly the thing. As I say, I love to read, and I can't. And Hillary's book. I mean, trying to read Hillary's book. The problem I have with that is that I just imagine her voice and the sound of fingernails on a chalkboard. And I can't do it.
Well, to do that toilet bowl server cartoon, I downloaded the book on tape and was like listening to it to cut together the different things that she says to you. And man,
your life has never been the same.
Hillary Clinton.
And then what you see here, this Matthew Axelrod, when he was in this high position in the Justice Department, was late 30s, early 40s. Barack Obama, when he took office, Bill Clinton, when they took office, middle 40s. That's how this game, I think, works. They get younger people, and they say, you thought you were going to be the deputy principal in some high school in Mineola, and instead you're going to be in charge of making, HUD, the HUD department, $1 trillion department, and your job is to make sure everybody looks the other way as we back our trucks up and steal as much money as possible, and you get to call yourself a cabinet officer.
The Brinks trucks.
That seems to be how they do things.
I don't know if our viewers outside of New York are familiar with Mineola.
Yeah, it's not. You don't need to go there.
It's not the best place.
No.
I've spent some time in Mineola.
That sounds like the beginning of a bad country western song.
I always used to equate Mineola with SpaghettiOs just because of the sound of the Mineola. What is that?
That's right.
Where's the full-size Ola?
That's for a separate broadcast on the inner workings of Jason's brain. The connectivity.
Are we on the next page?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We can go there. All right, so this is yet another. We go through, this letter goes on and on and on, but what it does is it basically says, look, there's a system that this guy was aware of because he was read into it, that the Secretary of State and a large number of other people every day see a volume of email and traffic that has the classification markings on it, right? He knows it because he saw them every day. What Hillary Clinton provided when she provided, quote, all of her emails is inconsistent with what this guy knew to be the case. And he writes in this letter that he was dumbfounded when he heard tale. I mean, the news that the private server came to light was early in 2014, I think. The actual emails came public later in 16 after this interchange here. But here it says, I have personally read classified Department of State briefing documents while Secretary Clinton was in office. So it's not word of mouth. I think this is what could be there. He's actually seen it, all right? And he says, what you need to do is merely compare the summaries he knows about with what has been produced, and you'll see the obvious fraud. You'll see it. And Ron Johnson was just on Fox News with Mark Levin, talking about the incuriosity of the mainstream media. That, you know, there's an obvious comparison. Hillary says these are her emails, but this guy's telling you, no, they're not. These have been stripped of their metadata. They've been on purpose. What she provided, she got all the stuff. She had it in her custody and control from sometime after January 21st, 2009 to February 1st, 2013, when she was at the State Department, then till the 5th of December, 2014. She had all these presidential records, these government records, this classified information under her custody and control, and she knowingly caused her staff to alter it in violation of the Espionage Act.
And that's what I think the number 33,000 is about. Right. That's a very specific, like they're not saying 32,872, they're not, and also that's a low number of emails for a Secretary of State to have. That is her steganographic message that don't worry, we got the emails covered.
Right, yeah. And so he, in this link here, if you just quickly put it up here, he's making the point, Senator Johnson, I've met him once, once or twice actually. He's a very decent human being. He's saying, look, the Clintons have been involved in Ukraine. We've talked about this in the past, at least in 2004. Johnson's not saying this, but they've been involved. Maybe
this is from 2019?
This is just recent, yeah. The story's down here, I think will tell you. It's like in the last week or so.
October 20th.
October 20th. Clinton, there's a lot more potential corruption involving the Ukraine and the Clintons than there ever is, could ever be with Donald Trump. I mean, corrupt people in Ukraine were very interested in making sure that Hillary Clinton won. Corrupt people in Ukraine gave between $10 and $25 million to the Clinton Foundation that we know about. Corrupt people in Ukraine were involved with the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative beginning in 2004 when it certainly didn't exist. So there are a lot more things to look at here, Jake Tapper, if you can just wean yourself away from being an asshole. There are a lot more serious things to look at as an investigative journalist.
It's a big ask, Charles.
I know, it's a big job. So then, you know, here, just for people's benefit, here's a link to the Espionage Act. And last night, I saw the rerun of, I think, this interview with Johnson and Levin. And we've talked about this before. You don't need to have an intent to be tagged under certain provisions of this act. We don't need to go into the minutia. We've covered this at length. Lawyers can study this. It is bullshit that, you know, Hillary and others escape because there was no intent. And the reason they're going down this line of reasoning, I believe, is that Barack Obama and or Valerie Jarrett approved the use of secret servers and electronic devices and likely used them themselves. So they are guilty of the same thing that Hillary Clinton is likely guilty of with her staff. And that's the insurance policy for Hillary Clinton and her people, saying, you're going to construct this false narrative, you're going to sell it to the public, it's too complicated for the average person to think about. But the reality is, yes, Barack, I committed espionage, I committed treason, but so did you. And if I get tagged by a future Justice Department,
bringing you down.
Yeah, bringing you down. And that's why nothing has happened yet, because, you know, Barack Obama has to listen to that and say, you know what, I think we better get Trumpy.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense, Charles.
Yeah. So then, if we go to the next page, this one, I don't know how familiar you are with the Honduras situation.
Not very.
So in 2009, there was this guy acting up, Manuel Zelaya, 28th June 2009. He was acting up so badly that
John Conyers died?
Just now?
That's what someone says. CNN reporting John Conyers died, according to our viewer on Periscope.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes. Ryan told us that.
Another funeral. I'm sure Hillary will get
the hot
sauce ready in the biblical scriptures. She's also a good
KKK outfit. No, Conyers is not in the KKK, but she goes to KKK funerals.
Right. Anyway, so what happened in June of 2009 is that the leader of Honduras, and this country, by the way, is a country that has a lot of untapped natural resources, but little good infrastructure, very high crime rate, murder rate. And this guy was acting up. So the local government, under their constitution, they tried to remove him. And basically, Hillary intervened in all that. And this is a long summary of what happened, but the short version is, the whistleblower is saying, with regard to this specific incident, Hillary's people are saying, listen, Hillary is going to be in communication with the Tegucigalpa, which is, I guess, the capital city in Honduras, our embassy there, on her own system. Okay? He says in this thing that basically she would say, don't worry about this, I will send the highly classified instructions to our people on my toilet bowl server. And this is what this guy is saying. He doesn't yet, I don't think back on January 10th, 2016, he doesn't appreciate what we now know, or maybe he knows more than we know. But this is just one case in point, gleaned from this letter, where he's saying, I have specific knowledge that Hillary Clinton transferred classified information that was marked classified when it was sent and received. That he has specific knowledge of this. And Dopey James Comey says, that is not something I want to know about. Because that would make it impossible for me to clear Hillary Clinton. Okay? And this has been up. This letter, portions of this letter, have been up on the FBI vault file for about a year.
Wow.
Okay? And we go to the next page.
I guess
and final page.
Everybody's playing with Star Wars Legos rather than reading the FBI vault.
So he cautions in this thing. As the FBI agents investigate this case, they may occasionally find people whose full loyalty is not to the Constitution, but instead leans more toward politically appointed officials. He's basically saying, I'm in the State Department. He brags a little bit about what happened, the specifics of what he did. I take it this person may have been in the military and may have gotten some high honor or whatever for bravery. And he recites these different examples. And then there's a case of an ambassador gone rogue. And he says that this ambassador, that he's aware of an instance where the ambassador said he did not have to comply with the Department of State regulations because the president already put him in charge of the embassy. So there was this idea under Obama that, that Constitution over there, that, you work for me.
You're in charge.
And Holder's got my back at the Justice Department, then Loretta Lynch will have my back, so nobody's getting prosecuted unless I say they get prosecuted. So that's the way, Constitution be damned.
Serious thing that just occurred to me. Thelema, Aleister Crowley, their main tenet is do what thou willst. And that's kind of similar to that Obama order.
Right, yeah.
Just do whatever.
So I couldn't figure out how to get the shading off of this quote here, but I brought this up in the past for people. But, say what you want about Thomas Jefferson. We're alive in 2019. Who knows what we would have done in 1782? It was a very different time frame.
Twitter battles.
But with no electricity. But Jefferson was somebody who was unnaturally smart. Not only was he intellectually smart, but he was incredibly accomplished. He got a lot done. He spoke multiple languages. I'll remind our viewers that here's a person who insisted on his gravestone. It said Thomas Jefferson, it says something like Thomas Jefferson, author of the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, author of the Declaration of Independence, first president of the University of Virginia, or founder of the University of Virginia. That's what he wanted on his tombstone. This is a guy who also happened to be a governor of Virginia, the first Secretary of State under the Articles of Confederation, a vice president, and the President of the United States. He didn't want any of that on his tombstone. It was just author of the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, author of the Declaration of Independence, and founder of the University of Virginia. And here's a guy who in 1782, in answer to a questionnaire, wrote these words. The French were wondering what's going on in Virginia, in the United States, with you guys. You got rid of the English. That's good, but what's up with all this? and he says, our rulers will become corrupt, our people careless. He says this in 1782. A single zealot may commence persecutor, and better men be his victims. Does that sound like Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton?
They read this.
No, I doubt it.
Well, they were like, we
can do that.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do. Yeah. And then talking about the people, they will forget themselves, but in the sole faculty of making money, and will never think of uniting to effect a due respect for their rights. In other words, people will get lost in the humdrum of just focusing on making ends meet and making some more money if you have capital. And then he foretold that our rights eventually shall revive or expire in a convulsion. We are in a convulsion. I started writing about being in a convulsion in 2011 in the financial markets, and now in the political scene. We are definitely in a convulsion. We have intolerant people on university campuses in both parties who want the right to set up these global organizations that are not reviewed by anybody and then dictate how the rest of the world will be run. They want to tell you what to eat, what you can't eat, what to think, what you shouldn't think. They want to define what is a crime. They want to prosecute you without a trial. That's a group, and there are people, frankly, on the right and the left who are happy to do that. Jefferson understood back in his time how consequential it was to establish a government by and for the people in 1782. I mean, that was a new idea back then. There were kings and queens and dictators around the world, and this was a great experiment. And anybody who cannot see that in 2019 is guilty of having slept through history class, or maybe having listened to a bunch of scruffy idiots teaching them who don't know America's history. Okay, there's a lot wrong with America's history, but there's a lot great with America's history as well. And here we have a clear case in point. The FBI has had this information for a while, that there was at least one State Department whistleblower who was prepared to go on the record and explain why Hillary Clinton should go to prison January 10th, 2016 for the illegal work with their Clinton Foundation and selling influence for money at the State Department. He was prepared as a senior person, put his name out there, and James Comey did nothing, did not even take it up, and instead let her off the hook and then said, now I'm going to persecute Trump. Right?
Got to write that book.
Yeah, get Williams and Connolly to get me a nice book deal.
Yeah.
So we did keep it to the 2 hours. I bet you thought we wouldn't do that, but
I was doing my best to shut up.
But seriously, I think there has been a lot of progress here. We are no longer in charm school here, where there are fake investigations and nobody wants to do anything about it. I would remind skeptics that John Durham put a sitting Republican governor in jail.
Who was that?
Somebody Rowland in Connecticut. He is no nonsense. He doesn't care whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent. He's in search of crime. And there's evidence. He's opened a criminal investigation. We don't know how many grand juries are open. We do know that the bunch of the conspirators, the BKDs of the world, Price Waterhouse, Kendall, various lawyers, Doug Band, the Clintons, Dopey Chelsea, all these people are sitting there saying, well, we do seem to have a test coming our way November 15th. Can we somehow get maybe we don't have to go to class on the day of the test and maybe get the answers afterwards and get our automatic A? And I think the answer that Durham and Trump and others are saying is no. You're going to take this test, and you're going to fail this test. Yeah. And you are going to pay the consequences of having failed the American people for more than 2 decades.
Charles, I feel like there hasn't been enough conversation about what's going on with Julian Assange.
I agree with that.
Somebody said that, well, I won't talk about that because it was sent to me in an email, but I found it difficult to believe. They're trying to extradite him. They brought him out in court, and he was like incoherent. John Pilger and Craig Murray both said they were literally shocked to see how much weight he had lost, and that I can't remember which of those two guys said it, but that Julian Assange had the sharpest mind of anyone they had ever met, and to see him so mentally
broken down.
Yeah, it was torture and everything. Like, how is this able to? Trump's got to do something.
Yeah, he should do something about it. That's in the UK. I mean, again, as much as I like the UK, I've been there hundreds of times. You know, this is despicable what's going on here.
Yeah.
And to think that our cousins, as they like to call themselves, a much smaller country with much longer history, that our cousins would get as corruptly involved in the 2015-16 election period and now in the resistance from 17 forward, and think that, you know, they're just going to get off the hook. I mean, people need to pay significant prices. If people in our political system are going to spend the rest of their lives in prison and lose all their money, then people in the UK need to have the same thing happen to them.
Yeah.
And, you know, let's hope that we continue to make the kind of progress that I see having been made. Let's hope Trump retains the fortitude to keep this going, and Barr as well. The notion that Shifty Schiff and Nadler want to have, I just want to close with this one thought, want to have Barr recuse himself.
Why?
Because they know he's going to kick their ass.
Yeah, but what's their reason?
Well, I mean, there is no good reason. I mean, back when people were giving, remember Eric Holder, the Attorney General, Congress held Eric Holder in contempt. Holder's response was, I will wear this as a badge of honor. And then when asked what his role was, my role is to be, is to be Barack Obama's wingman. And Nadler and Schiff say, oh, okay, that's fine. but Barr, you know, he's just trying to expose corruption that may involve Democrats. I mean, who knows? It could involve John Kerry. It definitely involves Joe Biden. It likely involves Barack Obama. It could involve Valerie Jarrett. It could involve McCain. It could involve, you know.
Dig him up and put him on trial.
They used to do that kind of stuff
Really?
in the old days, yeah.
They like put him in the stand and be like, why aren't you answering the question? Well, I don't know, Charles. I'm still skeptical of William Barr. It's definitely good news that this Durham investigation has become a criminal investigation. But my first response when I heard that was like, wait a minute, wasn't it already that?
No, it wasn't.
I mean, I know that now. But it's like the subtleties of these things are amazing. And it seems like they want to recuse or demand that anyone recuse themselves if they think they might do anything.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with the actual reasons you're supposed to recuse yourself for. And if they like the person who should recuse themselves, then they don't ask them to recuse themselves.
Well, they don't. I mean, Rhodes was right about the press corps in Washington, D.C. I mean, the press corps in D.C. and the press corps in New York are economically illiterate. I mean, here you have, I mean, they're not financially astute, they're economically illiterate. Here you have Paul Krugman, who's been wrong about everything. He's a Nobel Prize winner, right?
Well, you know what? That Nobel Prize is a crock as well. I've been in communication with the Nobel Prize people, interestingly. I think it's a total piece of bullshit, as you might say.
Yeah, well, it's a foundation.
It's a political tool that's used to give to people who they want to prop up. And I think the same thing is done with the Pulitzer Prize.
And the Rhodes Scholarship.
The same thing is done with the Academy Awards. Did I ever tell you about the letter that I have from the Motion Picture Academy? Yeah, didn't win. But that was a technical Oscar. They didn't like the invention. Well, anyway, Charles, I guess that's the show for the day. Want to thank everybody for watching and remind everyone we're getting close to the end of the month, and there's always this sort of inexplicable but extremely precipitous drop-off in Patreon sponsorship, I think to do with technical stuff on Patreon. So if you are a Patreon sponsor, make sure your credit card is in there and that you're getting the shows. If anybody has any technical issues, they can email me on truth@crowdsourcethetruth.org. I'm happy to help people get into their Patreon accounts because I couldn't continue this show without the support and sponsorship of the viewers who go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. There is a huge library of exclusive content that you can only get as a sponsor on those two sites. So I hope that people will go there. Charles, thanks for another great presentation. Next year we'll have to also not wear Halloween costumes again. But happy Halloween to people who are going to enjoy it and enjoy the rest of the evening. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Oh, huge announcement coming tomorrow from Ole Damagard. He says perhaps the biggest development of his career.
Wow.
Yeah, so people can see that on Light on Conspiracies with Ole Damagard on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and patreon.com/lightonconspiracies. See everybody tomorrow. Thanks for watching.